Alright guys, welcome. It's Brian here, and guys, I got something cool for you today. Alright, I'm gonna bust this little tool out for you right here, that little whiteboard. And as I want to talk about the title, okay, that I'm gonna make this video. Because it's true, right? The world has definitely changed in various ways. Technology has certainly started to be more exponential in how fast the depth of change is happening, because that's what you could call it. You know, the exponential change means it's changing faster and faster. Okay, but I want to depict this for you guys. Okay, so sometime back in the day, for most of all of history, right? Basically, that was just kind of human beings, right? It was just pretty much the amount of interaction you had in your life was relatively similar. You might have had some like kind of various fluctuations depending on where you were in the world, but you could see that's kind of like, how like a sound wave or something might play out, just a fluctuation, right? There's highs and lows, but what I want to get at here is, okay, at a certain point in time, right, I'm going to say probably about 1985, which is the year I was born, okay, we also have basically like, the computer, technology, PC revolution of modern tech, right, coming in. And then, 15 years later, we have the dot-com boom, right, which starts to bring everything into this, higher place. And it's similar like to how you would see the stock market, because this is going to have its own highs and lows, ups and downs, right? But what I want to show you is between this time, right, as this is happening, okay, we're hitting this critical threshold where the internet is just taking over and everything as far as, okay, now let's go all the way back to ancient history. Okay, this is going all the way back. Okay, remember, thousands of years. People are not used to seeing more through the visual sense than your basic day-to-day. You're seeing people day-to-day, okay? And right about here, right, we start to go from like, actually probably a little bit, closer. The scale here is going to get stretched out. So this portion, right, this is going way back. But right about here, in the 40s, 50s, okay, we go from like radio to having forms of TV, and through periods of time, we have the camera when the camera was first invented, and TV, and coming from radio, and then first computers, and then iPhones, right? So around the iPhone period, that's when it was really significant that now people would start becoming basically zombies in terms of their ability to have to be connected to that phone at all times, right? So this arrow right here, this period of time, boom, that's like the advent of the iPhone. Okay, so now you have a screen. You're staring at the screen 24/7. So what this is doing is this is making the amount of information outside of just your environment, right? So now you have your environment, but then you have not just one other digital environment, but thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, right? It's going off the charts, right? Digital environments, digital worlds, right? We have, at the same time we have video games, we have, the level of quality of television, the quality of technology, pixel depth, high definition, 4K, 8K, whatever, ultra high, high def screens, right? It's just taking it to a new level. Even right, virtual reality, stuff like that. It's an insane level, is what I'm saying, and to the point where it's off the charts this way. Okay, so now that the current state of the human being is in this place up here, what that essentially means for the modern person is that the state of their of that experience of constantly being stimulated not only by this external environment, which you're most used to, not just some level of like, okay, you're coming home from work, you turn on the old, 6-channel tube and like, tune into the latest, mostly kind of like almost like listening to a podcast, right? And I'm not saying you can't tune these things out and live right outside of these things, but most of us are some way inundated by this in the world, or even just immersed, even if you completely yourself, it's hard to, unless you go out completely off grid, right? It's hard to escape from all the technology in terms of the towers, the frequencies, the transmission of all this stuff, and how immersed you are in those environments as well, which I've always said, it's kind of simple physics. It's heat energy is drying the body out, just the same way, but on a deeper inside out level, like microwave, yada yada. I'm not here to go into all the depths of how that stuff works, but I just think of stuff from a more intuitive level. And from that level, it makes sense, because although you cannot see this experience, it is happening, and those frequencies, those waves, those Wi-Fi, everything, it is hitting you. It is affecting you on even if it's on small levels. But the best thing you can always do is just be as resilient as possible. Just basically overcome it through your mind and body, whatever way possible, whatever challenges are thrown at you guys. So here, this is what I want you to remember, okay? So right here, you're going to have experience of cognitive overload, okay? So cognitive overload is basically when your mind and your brain is just experiencing too much information all at once, and it's the amount of data that it's having to process through its environment is going to like these kind of extreme levels, because again, remember, the screen is a different kind of environment, and now you're overlapping them. So your eyes, the thing I'm getting at, guys, is your eyes, right? They say like the eyes are, that's not a good eye. Okay, let's see. Yeah, let's see if I can get it properly there. They say the eyes are the light to the body, right? The eyes are the light to the body, okay? So, yeah. It's kind of hard at first to draw an eye unless you are actually like thinking about it. And yeah, you can see how different creatures have different eyes. It's pretty wild. But again, the eyes are the lights to the body, okay? Because the eyes take in the light, and in some sense, we are reflecting that. So, the fact that, the modern 20th century, right? Kind of like we had post Y2K, right? 20th century, boom. And then we have this like exponential curve, right? Because of that, now it's put people basically into almost like, almost like an aloof state, okay? So everybody's basically walking around in this state of being very, very, very aloof, okay? Anyway, essentially, that's the idea that we're getting at here today, guys, is because of that stimulation, having some way to, balance the nervous system, okay? Which is this constant cycling of energy between more excited states and more relaxed states, right? So this cycle here is what you're balancing, okay? And another way to depict that cycle is, again, in a singular format known as a wave or a fluctuation or a frequency, because everything is connected to that, right? The balance point is what allows you to then have two sides to the scale, okay? So the two sides to the scale is, the scale is what's weighing on a deeper level. The scale is what's weighing your heart against the weight of the feather. So if you can live in a way and keep your heart light as a feather, is what the ancient truths taught us, well then, you will be able to move into the afterlife, right? Essentially. But these scales, right? These scales, this balancing of reality is also understanding that everything is happening through waves, okay? So to tie it all together, because of this cognitive overload, right? And because people are so overstimulated, what happens is it forces people to this very fight or flight state. So it's essentially what you're seeing. You're just seeing a bunch of people who are overrun by this world that we've all, created, found ourselves in. But anyway, guys, that's my little insight for today. So on one level, try to have patience and compassion in dealing with life, because you can come from this level of most people are just fried. Or, also just use it to your advantage in terms of like keeping yourself, more grounded. But yeah, in general, guys, you have to be smart in this day and age, because what happens is now you have this energy spreading, and when essentially someone, right, is in an intoxicated state, well, we'll say within certain reason, right? Because there's like a fine line, right? Even with like something like alcohol, you're allowed to have a drink or two and then drive your car. But the point I'm making, right, is that this is what happens. You end up in this intoxicated state. So you're kind of just overwhelmed by the amount of information that you're taking in, and as a result, yes, you end up in this almost dull, lifeless state, right? One might call it sort of just like lackluster or zombie-like, or many multitudes of other names, but the idea is similar. NPC, But yeah, most people, I think their brain is just basically fried, and so it's not tapping into anything below the surface, which again is not for you to worry about so much as you have to worry about your own life at the end of the day, right? So that's really what this whole thing is about, guys. To use your eyes, to use your mind, to control your focus on the things you want to work on, right? That's why I'm sharing this with you guys, because this is something for me that, it's deeper than this reality, which is the visual era. We could call it the introduction into the visual era, where we have the internet, computer, now AI, and just a high level of information being processed on an extreme level, both organic and artificial. So both in the world around you and then in your screens and in your virtual world. So the point I'm making is that because now, not to say we can really accurately compare people's states of previous times, but I would say in general, the thing is that we're supposed to be either way at this higher and higher state, right? Essentially, if we're doing it as aligned with nature or correctly as we can, where it's just like the information is carrying forth and it's building in a positive way. So people may have been aloof, and of course everybody's different. Certain people are at different developmental places, right? So there's just always going to be people who are at their own place in this world and in your experience. But what I'm getting at, guys, is that so many people are caught in this state, this void, this aloofness, you could even say like fakeness, larpiness, all this, whatever. It's all kind of tied together, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. And I just want you guys to think about it from that spectrum of like, okay, well, what you're taking in is, again, on that same level. It's creating that excess stimulus, and that excess stimulus is literally burning the system hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter until you burn out. I know it's like, it's ironic because it is kind of like, it's like too simple. It shouldn't be like something that direct, right? But at the same time, why not? Because that's human nature on some level. That's really what is happening. And it's easier really to think about it from a simple perspective of like, okay, don't burn yourself out, find a balance. That doesn't mean you don't take action and live your life. If anything, you push yourself to the edge of burnout, because you will. Most, especially men, right? But women too will experience this in their own certain ways. But most people, and especially in the modern day, that's what we're getting at, push themselves to the edge of burnout. So the only way to actually do that is to do it with some inkling of balance, to remain in a state where you can keep going and you don't, the wheels don't necessarily fall off, so that you now don't even have that opportunity and ability. Thus, you really are, without a paddle at that point, right? So that's why we talk about wellness, health, right? Because it is the first foundation. And I get it, I'm not going to really tell anybody, because that's not, like how to choose what's good for you. But again, a lot of people would agree, like if you don't have your health, most everything else is less alluring and almost like pointless to some degree, especially if you're in really, really bad physical health and you have potentially all these resources at your disposal, right? So to avoid that kind of worst case scenario, I think build a habit just early on. I'm going to do some more stuff soon, guys, talking about a lot of interesting stuff, but the whole point is always to tie it together, to tie it back to what's going to help you and give you something actionable. And I think it's also about giving you some perspective and some depth on why that's even, why, and then also how. So, the what is just taking that time, right, to disconnect so you don't get fried. The why is really so you don't overload the system, you don't overheat, and you don't shut down and break down to the point you're beyond repair. And now, all these lessons that you really want to put into practice, now you're basically stunned. So you're not even able to do that, So, and then of course, basically, lastly is just, in essence, the way to do that is to maintain that focus. The way to do it is to build that discipline that allows you to take action and activate, almost in a motor memory style, kind of, I don't want to say boring, but, there is that aspect of boring things get good results. So you have to be able to incorporate that. At the end of the day, I think you should still enjoy and find interest in everything, because if you truly love something, it's never boring. So the boring stuff is almost like always fun. The only time you really get bored is when you just have no thirst for life. Another topic, another video, another time. But for today, guys, I just want you to think about that, okay? The what, the why, the how to get activated. Get yourself out of that zombie-like state so that you can help others, essentially, and save the world, right? That's what it's all about. That's why we're all here. But really, on the most basic personal level, again, to just reiterate, and I'll close it off, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe if you're still here, if you enjoyed it. I appreciate y'all tuning in. And, just to basically bring it all home, guys, like the whole point is, obviously, you want to be able to have an impact, but also be able to free yourself up, so it gives you the opportunity, I should say, to do both, because now you can have an impact, but simply by using your voice and your choice and bringing along the glory to your story. Right now, boom, you're adding value in a way that's also ideally connecting to others, and that's what you're learning how to do, is like, okay, how do I do both of those things? How do I get out of that aloof state, take action, be a participant in that way? Because most people aren't. But since you want to be, since you're here, since this has found you, well then, yeah, that's absolutely something you should feel inspired and give yourself allowance to do, but feel inspired to do. So break free, guys. That's the theme. We've gone into this crazy visual era where access to visual information has gone off the charts, basically fried our brains. So the point is to figure out the way, figure out the method for you to get grounded. If you need help, right, it's very simple. We help you guys. We'll do the one-on-one coaching. You can join the community, the free community even, and just get access to the monthly updates, newsletters, stuff like that, guys, tools, free tools, and there's so much more, right? The beauty is that, once again, this is a lot of stuff that it's not really new. It's not like special or unique. We have like these fancy names like grounding, to get outside and walk barefoot, oh my God, right? It's crazy. But the truth is, we need to do this in the modern day to help people reconnect on a level that is going to push and evolve the whole thing forward. Okay, man? All right, so tune in and stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe. Much love, one love. All right, guys, we'll see you soon. And again, the most important thing is we're all here. Sometimes we can agree to disagree, but we can also find commonality to move the thing forward in a way that's just more sane. And that means coming out of this state, enough people at critical mass shifts that. It makes that consciousness accessible to more people. All right, stay tuned, guys. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following along. And again, if you want one-on-one coaching, make sure you hit the link, take the quiz, What's Holding Me Back, or just reach out, schedule a call, whatever it be. We're just getting started. We're just building things up here. All right. Bless. See you guys soon.